Hi, and welcome to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell. Do please subscribe to the channel. In this week's video, we are going to be meeting another elite manager and taking a look at their preparations for the upcoming game week. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell. You can find me on Twitter at utterlytc. Do please give me a follow. Now, I should just say, last week's video was another awesome success. I really enjoyed talking to Craig, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening to what he had to say in terms of his preparation for game week 2. And this week, I'm so excited to welcome along Mark Mansfield. You can see there, look at that record, guys. The best ever finish of 227. You know, a little while ago, Mark, in 2014-15, but still absolutely exceptional with loads and loads of top 5k finishes, 6 of those, and top 10k finishes. We're looking at 7 as well. So Mark, welcome along to the channel. It's great to have you here.
Hey Tom, delighted to be here.
Good man, good man. Look, let's get straight into it, Mark. We've got some playing style notes there. You make the point straight away that you look to use all available means to gather information. Now, I am sure you are going to mention the amazing tools we have available at fantasyfootballfix.com. But is that effectively what you mean? Is it about information gathering from lots of different sources to make your decisions? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I guess it is mainly coming down to a cop-out in that I don't wish to identify as any particular type of manager.
Okay.
I'm too lazy to classify myself. I've watched football for a long time. I've played fantasy football for a long time. I pay attention to the statistics. I pay attention to models. I pay attention to my gut. I blend all of these things in a non-systematic way to play fantasy football. So any way I can find some information or any kind of what I perceive to be an edge, I'll take it and I'll hopefully use it to score more points.
Good on you. Mark, do you find that you ever struggle with sort of information overload? And if you've got like a very clear thought in your head in terms of, you know, we're going to talk about your plans for game week 3 in a little bit, but let's say, for example, if you had a clear target in mind for that, do you allow yourself to get kind of changed by taking on and assimilating all of that information? Or do you stay, you know, true to your initial reading of the situation over how it's gone over the weekend? How do you sort of deal with that balance?
Yeah, I think it's something that really has become an issue in recent years. There's just a lot of information out there, and you can easily get swayed by other people's opinions, and you can get swayed by fear. So a technique that I found to be somewhat useful, maybe just in the last 2 or 3 years, is when the prior game week is over, maybe look at what you want to do. Come up with 2 or 3 of your own ideas, and then spend the week evaluating those.
Yeah.
And in such a situation, somebody needs to come up with a really compelling argument over the course of the week to make you change your mind. Now, those compelling arguments can be on their own merits. You know, somebody's dug up some good data or something like that.
Sure.
Maybe an injury happens in a Champions League game. You know, things like this. But information overload on Twitter is real. People should avoid it. And it's the person who speaks loudest is not always the smartest person.
No kidding. Absolutely. Good advice there, guys. Absolutely. And the amount of information that's out there, obviously, here on fantasyfootballfix.com and over on the website, we've got just a mass of information, huge amount of stats tools that we've talked about in the past as well that can help you assimilate that and try and filter out some of that noise so that you can come to the most informed, you know, decision that you can. So that's useful. Mark, the other part that you make there, you say you're looking for opportunities to differentiate. I found that really interesting because that's not something I've seen from the other managers so far. But how do you go about sort of achieving that? Is that kind of around the edges with the more kind of cheaper players, or is it another means? Do you sort of look at fixture swings? How would you say is you sort of typically look to differentiate your team from your competitors?
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't like to make out that I'm some kind of maverick who takes a lot of risks, because I'm not. I think a feature of the players who are on the elite fix 11,
yeah,
I would say risk averse, and there can be a lesson there. Where I would talk about differentiating is maybe, you know, cheaper substitutes in defences, for example. And by substitutes, I mean players who aren't the most talked about premium asset. So off the top of my head, I haven't planned this, I think William Saliba, as opposed to maybe one of the more expensive Arsenal defenders at the moment, is an opportunity to slightly differentiate, save some money, and just get a little edge. You get a little extra million, maybe 500,000. But a guy has emerged. He could be, as we say, nailed.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not. But at this stage, a wild card coming up, maybe I'd be inclined to take that risk, get that extra 0.5, and you're limiting your risk because you're hoping you're still going to cover the clean sheets of someone like Gabriel, and maybe you miss one haul, but you've got that extra money.
It's a really interesting one. So it's around the price points, I see, because I've talked about previous videos that clean sheets are a team level metric, so that's actually befitting that you've used that as an example to say you're still tapping into that same clean sheet metric, but actually you're looking elsewhere, and if you can save yourself a few quid in the by doing so and actually invest it elsewhere, that's where you get the edge. I hadn't thought of it like that. That's exactly, interesting as well. Do you find that you look to differentiate more as the season goes on, Mark, or are you sort of right at the beginning of the season, that's the time by which to deviate from the template, or does it not really factor into your thinking too much time of the season?
No, it definitely would factor in. I mean, I think one of the things that I probably do consciously is I play differently at different times in the season.
Go on.
So, I generally have a trajectory on my seasons where maybe my first week or two is good. Then I go through a long period of floundering and just getting worse and worse until I play a late wild card. And then as we come into chip season, I'm forced to take some evasive maneuvers and dangerous strategies. So I'm aware at that point, if I want to get a reasonable rank, I'm going to have to take risks.
Sure.
But I think a lot of people, and I mentioned earlier about, people develop these personas when they play fantasy football. I think it's really dangerous. And really how you play, certainly with respect to risk, should depend on game state over the course of the season. And I would be really conscious of that, really conscious of it. I took 2 12-point hits at the end of last season because I had to. I was doing quite badly, and I managed to rescue something like 13,000, which
amazing.
I was really pleased with.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that I think for the viewers and the listeners, actually, Mark, is going to be really encouraging. I think a lot of people can get pretty despondent if they get off to a slow start in Fantasy Premier League. It's such a long campaign. But actually hearing you then sort of saying, well, actually, there's means by which you can differentiate, you can take risks, down the stretch, as it were, later on in the season, and still, as you say, pull together an awesome rank, is actually something that people can cling on to, definitely.
I think, my idea of a good manager mightn't be the same as what other people's are. I think a lot of people, or most people, can get off to a flyer and follow it through to the end of the season. When I see someone managing a season well, what I think is when they get into a little bit of difficulty, do they give up? Do they figure out how to turn it around? Do they turn off the tilt, as they say in poker? If you can pull around a bad season, I think that makes you a really good manager. And I've seen, some content creators last season having a nightmare, but they stuck with it. They didn't give up. Pulled it around. Mightn't have got, top 10k, but they pulled the season around. That's a good manager for me.
There you go, guys. So if you want to get on Mark's sort of good list, then that's the way to do it. If you're having a tough season, then you need to stick with it, stay the course, and see that rank improve come the end of the season. The way to do that, guys, is to head over to fantasyfootballfix.com, subscribe, of course, and enjoy all of the tours as well. Mark, let's move on and take a little look at how this Game Week 2 team of yours is shaping up. Bear with us right now. So what we're looking at right now there, Mark, the viewers can see straight away that you have opted for Game Week 2 for a 4-4-2 formation. So if I just reveal this goalkeeper, we can see straight away that you spent big, or comparatively big, in terms of what you can actually spend for a goalkeeper. And you opted for Edison, who's already picking up that drip feed of points right now with another helpful clean sheet there for the Man City goalkeeper. I got a couple of questions on this one, Mark. Is spending big at goalkeeper, is that a new thing for you? Is that something which is just how the prices have fallen this season? What are your thoughts on spending sort of the upper range on a goalkeeper at the beginning of the season?
If I recall correctly, it's not something I've done for a few seasons, but he was the only keeper who made sense to me in every respect. The other options would have been a double Leicester keeper. Just didn't feel it like other people did. I think there was an option to have maybe Ward and Sanchez. Could have gone with that.
Yeah.
But the only one I felt right with was Ederson. Slightly unusual for me to, double up on defense or spend that much on the keeper. But my logic was I could see how Ederson goes, assuming he got one clean sheet in the first two. He would be a little piggy bank of money, and it would buy me time to see what defenses were functioning.
Oh, I like it. Okay.
Ederson. So
Yeah.
my objective at the start of game week 1 was to get to roll my first transfer, and then be flexible. Mm-hmm. So I see no reason to sell Ederson now.
No, of course not. No. Okay, well let's take a look at the defense and see how you've augmented that. So you've spent big there. So if I reveal the back four, and we can see there. So guys, this video is being recorded on Monday evening, so prior to the Liverpool match. So you can see there aren't points associated with Trent Alexander-Arnold or Andy Robertson yet. We obviously expect them both to start in the Crystal Palace home game. But look, I mean, you've spent an awful lot of money there, Mark. But I mean, you can see fantastic returns in game week 2 with Cancelo picking up that 11-pointer and Reece James continuing his strong start to the season as well. And then the Liverpool double up there. So, I mean, in terms of spending big at the back, and I don't know, we talked on last week's video with Craig about it's all relative, isn't it? It's not actually spending huge amounts compared to the peers in the midfield. It's just you couldn't really spend more than that in defence. Is that a strategy that you've long been an advocate for, or is that just something for this season?
No, I absolutely hate it.
Okay.
But I think, having watched Craig's videos last week, he was speaking the truth. The value is too great to ignore. The game has changed. Maybe it's changing again as we see the emergence of the likes of Haaland and Nunez in, City and Liverpool are the trendsetters at the moment. So if Klopp and Guardiola are moving towards a different style of play, everyone else is going to follow. We may see next season, the season afterwards, everyone is back getting, a lot of money up front. But the current reality is, you saw what Reece James did yesterday. You saw what Cancelo did.
Yeah.
Time will prove me wrong, no doubt, but let's assume that one of Robertson or Trent will haul tonight. I think it's a good bet. The reality is this is where the value is, and until FPL fix it, this is what we're going to do. I've always been a 3-4-3 player. I almost went 3-5-2 this season, but I saw Robertson play in the let's call it the Charity
Shield. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what real people call it.
Yeah.
And just you see things with your eyes. You see a fullback popping up at the back post all the time, and you think he's got one of the best crossers in the game on the other side. I'll have a bit of that.
Do you think as well with Sadio Mane moving on and that kind of left hand side being perhaps more able to be exploited by him? I mean, he's been an amazing asset, hasn't he, over his time at Liverpool as well. I wonder whether or not that he might even be more effective as a result of that. Remains to be seen. I guess one of the questions I had for you, Mark, in relation to that Liverpool composition. So, bit of a spoiler before I reveal the midfield, but Mo Salah is there with the vice captaincy. So he is that's your Liverpool trio. Do you think there's any temptation? Obviously, we don't know how the Palace game's going today, but a game, is going to go today. Is there any temptation for you to redivert, the Robertson funds, for example, and move to a Darwin Nunez up front as part of a front three? Is that on your mind at the moment, Mark? Are you going to stay the course irrespective of how Darwin gets on tonight?
Yeah, I'm battling myself on the general idea of having Robertson over one of the attackers. Like there's a gravitational pull for me not to spend money in defense. It's just the way I play. So I'm really fighting myself to have this money at the back. Darwin, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
There's going to be defenses will react to what Darwin becomes and does.
Yes.
And maybe he'll catch some teams out, and then manager will look and go, now we have to account for Darwin. Okay, well that's going to release a little bit of pressure on Salah, and this will go like that for a little while. People have flip-flopped from week to week.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to wait a little while to see the Liverpool situation.
Sure.
But what we do know is Trent and Robertson are exceptional players. Exceptional.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, cool. Let's move on and take a look at this midfield of yours then, Mark. So I mentioned obviously Mo Salah with the vice captaincy. tonight. Don't think we need to talk about Mo too much, as people watching this video will have heard of him. Martinelli there, what a start it's made to the season, picking up points all over the place, and even with his 2 price rises at the time of recording is still tremendous value. I think the ones gravitating to the ones with the lowest scores there, your budget players there of Neto and Bailey respectively. Mark, I wondered what your thoughts were on Leon Bailey. Obviously missed out in terms of starting in the home match against Everton over the weekend. Is he on the chopping block? And if so, what are you thinking in terms of that midfield spot?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. He's a 5 million midfielder. What do you want? The reason I sell him is he's going to lose value, and you've got an extra opportunity to completely reinvest all your value this season, so you don't want to lose value. That's the only reason I'd sell him. Mm-hmm. If I knew he was going to be 5, I'd spend my transfers elsewhere.
Oh.
If I knew he was going to be 5, continuously and not suffer price drops. And at the same time, I don't really have anyone else to deal with, so naturally be him. But if you've got other things to do, don't worry about having Leon Bailey on the bench. He's 5.5 over minimum price. He's going to do something sometime this season, but you're going to miss it because he'll be on your bench.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I know some of the other conversations that we've had with the other elite managers have talked about, those, edge points and not having expectations too high as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, in any given week, if you can return, if maybe between 5 and 7 of your players can return, you're okay. Mm-hmm. Players are going to blank every week. It's most likely that your cheapest players are going to blank. Don't get too worked up about it. Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and I mean, we're looking at the bench there as well, Mark. So you mentioned Ward before in terms of the Leicester rotational goalkeeper. Obviously, he didn't use the double up there, but a playing keeper there. You've also got Andreas Pereira from Fulham as well, and Nico Williams, who had a really impressive showing against West Ham, didn't he, on the weekend? And then Archer as the bench there. So it's not looked like the team is littered with problems. It looks like you've already got the 2 free transfers. So if I just roll on and take a look at the forwards, I mean, I suspect people could have guessed. Gabriel Jesus, most of the world seemed to own him. So his 19 points were awesome, but of course were picked up by so many of us. And then you opted for Erling Haaland with that captaincy. You and I were talking off air just before recording, Mark, about his perceived lack of involvement there. I'm not sure I subscribe to that narrative. What were your feelings in terms of how that game played out for him in the game against Bournemouth? Is there anything to be worried about, or is that just nonsense?
I mean, it wouldn't concern me. I mean, it's the same as it's not a concern that he didn't score against Liverpool in the game 2 weeks ago. This guy is potentially the best forward since Suarez. He has a body of work that suggests he's going to score goals. He's moved to the best team in the Premier League for chance creation. He's got the most creative manager when it comes to figuring things out. I think, again, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. What are you going to do? He's a good price. He's a good player. He's in a good team.
Absolutely.
Just play him every week. And even if you want to just captain him every week, fine. I don't think too many will captain him this week, but haven't seen match of the day and haven't seen Brighton camped out on Newcastle's line, I'll be having to think about it.
Okay, interesting. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And I mean, it's the sort of things the stats wouldn't necessarily tell you as well. The touch map or the heat map suggesting lack of involvement and what have you. But it was called out on Match of the Day, wasn't it? The opportunity to have had the ball squared to him for a tap in would have been a certain goal as well. So, like you said at the beginning of the video, Mark, about assimilating that information, that's what you try and do. So, look, I mean, in terms of game week 3, obviously we've still got tonight's game to play out. You've got 3 players there. Let's say they come through unscathed and there's nothing in particularly pushing you to say Darwin or Luis Diaz. Obviously, that's completely speculative. How are you feeling about game week 3? What are your thoughts in terms of potential transfers? How are you thinking about captaincy and setting up the team? What are you thinking for the upcoming game week?
In terms of captaincy, I think it's really, really open. If people are brave, there are moves to be made. Reece James is there. Jesus is there. Mm-hmm. People want to stick with Haaland or Salah, that's fine. I don't really try and talk people out of doing things that aren't mainstream. I think if you want you look at the teams that most people will have, you can captain 5 players. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. You can. In terms of transfers, as I said, probably Bailey will go. Think I have $1 million in the bank because you buy Neto, Martinelli, and Bailey. You anticipate your first transfer is going to be one of these guys, so you keep $1 million. You hope best case 2 of them do something. Worst case none. So one of them doing something is okay.
Sure.
Looking at maybe one of the Brighton lads, Jorginho.
Okay.
I know people have gone for De Silva at Bournemouth, but to me that's sideways. You're just swapping a minute's problem for a minute's problem. So I get it, but probably not for me.
And the Jorginho move, I'm really intrigued by that one. He's a player we've talked about before on the show, actually, Mark, in terms of those, the penalties, I guess, is the appeal there. Is he a player who you'd be happy to start week on week?
Yeah, and you'd have to start him week on week just for the the penalty thing. He's very much not the kind of player that I would get, but at his price, with my needs, and with the fact that you're going to play a wild card in the next max 7 weeks, I think you can just leave him there, hope you get a penalty or 2, and it's fine for 6 million.
Yeah.
He's got to play because Kante's injured, Kovacic is injured. He's got to play. Who's with him is another interesting question. If you thought Conor Gallagher played in that Chelsea team every week for the next 5 weeks, 5.9 million. Think about it.
It's an intriguing one, isn't it? After such a good season for him last time out whilst on loan at Crystal Palace. And look, the transfer window's still open, isn't it, Mark? And there's been rumblings as to whether or not there might be a move for him, but he needs to be playing football, doesn't he? So that's a really interesting shout that you've suggested there. So look, before we close up, Mark, I'm going to have to hold you to this. Bus team captaincy for game week 3. Who's it on?
Need to get the fixtures here on the Fantasy Football Fixture Analyzer.
Good man, well plugged, yeah.
Game week 3, let's see. Who is the captain? Yeah, I mean, narratives ahoy. If the game against United goes ahead.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't captain Salah against United last year.
Ooh.
I captained Havertz. I would do it again.
Yep.
But yeah, Monday night game. I'm off next week. I'm going to have a few. I'm going to enjoy Salah captain against United, I think.
Against an absolutely turgid Man United, isn't it? It's unbelievable. It's actually uncanny that each of my videos that I've been recording on this series, Mark, they've always ended with a nod, a sort of nod to Man United and how badly they've been doing. But interesting. And you say about the game being under threat, that's a narrative we need to follow, isn't it, with the protests and what have you. So we shall see.
We love the narrative.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, to talk to you. I'm sure everyone has enjoyed it as well. So is there anything else that you wanted to bring up in relation to what you've got planned for Game Week 3?
No, I haven't got a clue. I'll see. I haven't put too much thought into it.
No.
But maybe I'll do something. Maybe I'll sell Robertson and buy Darwin.
We'll see.
Take a hit.
And look, if you want to find out, then you can absolutely head over to fantasyfootballfix.com and subscribe, of course. And you can go to the Elite Manager section and check out how Mark, how Craig, how Corey, how everyone else is doing as planning their season as they look to continue these amazing run of overall ranks that I am so envious about. But Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on the channel. I'm sure people will drop a comment in below and let you know what they think of your team for the upcoming game week and your thoughts overall. So do please do that, guys, and do please also smash a like on the video on your way out, and do please also subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Fantasy Football Fix over on the website as well, and we look forward to seeing you next week for another video. Have a great game week 3, and I'll see you next week. Bye.